Chapter 4 Back to Ninth Grade. The first day after the volcano, Mr. Litsky proceeded with our regular social studies schedule. He wouldn't even talk about the eruption, which none of us wanted to hear more about anyway, but we thought it might throw off the oral history project. You'll hear enough about volcanoes in the coming days on the news and in science class. There was muttering. Please take out your oral history guidelines. Today is an exciting day. We'll be starting our oral history project with a field trip to Buena Vista nursing home. There were pained noises. Each student was required to become buddies with a senior at a nearby Buena Vista convalescent home. Don't get me started on corny names in the Midwest that use Spanish words to sound cool. Any language loser award is a motel named Casa del Toro, which as best as I can figure means House of Bull. Anyway, teachers loved oral history and similar kinds of outreach projects. Cleaning up parks and riverbanks, building Habitat for Humanity houses, which I looked forward to next year. Anything to get us out of the classroom so they didn't have to do any actual teaching. Anything to put us kids on display so the Scrooges of the community would vote yes on the next school bond issue. Anything to show parents that the teachers weren't slackers who handed out worksheets and then kicked back to read the newspaper. Like Mr. Litsky. Not far from retirement, his hair had retired long ago, he spent most of each class period rattling the newspaper and then asking us pop questions about current events. I got on his bad side one day when he thought I was volunteering an answer. Yes, Miles, you know about the NRA's position on handguns? He seemed surprised and pleased that I would raise my hand. No, and how the heck would I? We never get to see the newspaper because you read it all day. I got detention and a note home, and it was downhill from there. Now, every chance he got, Mr. Litsky stuck it to me. On this warm February day, we bussed over to Buena Vista. Who would trust ninth graders to walk 3 blocks? Outside the home, a few old-timers were parked in wheelchairs facing the sun. Some had nodded off. Others sat slumped with their heads slacked to one side or their mouths open. Not to worry, Mr. Litsky said as we unloaded. He gave me a particularly smug look. You'll be assigned to someone who can still talk and think and tell all sorts of wonderful stories. Stories like how it feels to wear diapers again, I muttered as we neared the front doors. Under one of the wheelchairs was a shiny little puddle of pee. Inside, the place had gleaming white long hallways with square corners and curved mirrors above them to prevent wheelchair collisions. The whole place smelled funny, kind of like sourdough bread. Residents moved along in their walkers or wheelchairs. Rubber tips and wheels squeaked on the bright floor. They didn't look around much. It was like their brains had been sanitized by breathing fumes from too many antiseptics and cleaning fluids. But the geezers all seemed to be heading down the hall in one direction. Mr. Litsky met with the administrator, then began to call out our names. An attendant, a male nurse-type guy in white pants, white tennis shoes, and thin ponytail, passed out name tags. Mine read Hans Kurz. Han Solo? Nathan Schmidt whispered to me. The administrator, a middle-aged guy in a skinny tie, said, "Welcome to Buena Vista. Each of you now has the name of your new friend. They're all assembled in the rec room waiting for you. So why don't we head down there too?" In the rec room, the old-timers were lined up in wheelchairs, or else leaned on walkers, or else slumped in folding chairs. They each wore a large name tag with a first name and a last initial of someone in our class. "Please step forward and introduce yourself," Mr. Litsky called. We reluctantly began to move up and down the row of geezers. Soon, everybody found his or her buddy. Everybody except me. I looked around. While I didn't particularly want a buddy, neither did I want to be standing there like a loser. Everyone stared at me. "Ha ha, Miles," Nathan whispered. The administrator checked his clipboard, then turned to the male nurse in white pants and white tennis shoes. "Where's Mr. Kurz?" The nurse grinned slightly. "Wouldn't come. Says he hates kids." Everybody in the class laughed. At me. I wasn't bothered in the least. I thought the nurse was cool, possibly an adult troublemaker, and I thought he might even like Mr. Kurz. Anybody who hated ninth graders couldn't be all bad. "So what's your name, kid?" the male nurse said as we walked down the hall toward Mr. Kurz's room. Miles. Miles Newell. Miles, this is your lucky day, he chuckled. We stopped at door 29A and tried to push it open. It was barricaded from the inside. The nurse rapped sharply, then put his ear to the wood. Mr. Kurz? Go away, came a raspy voice. Mr. Kurz? Hans, move away from the door, please. I am away from the door, darn it. I'm trying to watch the news. But you must have accidentally put something against the door. It feels blocked. The nurse winked at me. Hee, came a hoarse laugh. Got a visitor for you, said the male nurse. A friend wants to see you. There was silence. I made pantomime motions that I didn't really need to see him, that I was running late, had a taxi cab, a plane to catch, those sorts of motions. You can't fool me, Mr. Kurz said. I never had any friends. I always lived alone. It's never too late to make a friend, the nurse said, all the while pushing against the door and beginning to make some progress. I'm 90 years old. I don't need any friends, rasped the voice. The nurse pulled me in after him. A very old man with a leathery face sat in bed with a sheet pulled up to his waist. He was fully dressed, including a heavy wool plaid shirt, and we could see the outlines of boots on his feet. But I couldn't take my eyes off his eyebrows. They were as thick as squirrel tails. White hairs stuck out all over the place. I had never seen eyebrows that bushy. What I need is some peace and quiet, the old man growled. His eyes went back to the overhead television. Mr. Kurz, the nurse said, meet Miles Newell. Miles, Mr. Kurz. Mr. Kurz glanced at me briefly, then turned back to the screen. Congratulations, the nurse said to me on his way out. You guys are now officially buddies. The door latched behind him. I sat there as Mr. Kurz watched volcano coverage. I yawned. Several minutes passed. Suddenly, the old man began to laugh, a hoarse, wheezing laugh that went on and on. Excuse me, sir? I finally asked. He hawked into a paper cup, then turned to me. Hard times gonna come again, boy. Hard times? I asked. He nodded. Like the Great Depression, only worse. This time it will be dog eat dog, root hog or die. I thought of Dara Jameson. And you know why, kid? His blue eyes bored into mine. No, sir. He wheezed out another long laugh. Because people don't know how to do anything anymore. Oh, they're good with computers and all those electronic gadgets, but they forgot the old ways. The old ways? How to make it on your own if you have to. How to find food, stay warm, live off the land, he rasped. Let them eat their email. Let them burn their computers to stay warm at night. Then they'll find out. Don't you see? He laughed so hard he hunched over in a coughing fit. I see, I answered. I saw that Mr. Lidsky had really stuck it to me this time.